Hey everybody, welcome to Tarot Tuesday with Tori. And I thought I would just share with you all a tarot deck my friend did, my friend Colette Baron Reid. It is the Good Tarot. I'm sure many of you already know this deck, but a couple things I want to say about when approaching a new deck, ways in which to look at your tarot deck. And a couple things that you want to get into energetically when you look at a deck. And one of the things that Colette and I talked about, I guess it was a couple weeks ago now, we're talking about the idea of when we create a deck, the idea is to lift it up energetically and lock it into a universal consciousness. It really has to be locked with, in a way, with spirit so that it makes sense to people. Now, here's the thing. The thing I want to let you know about, first of all, is that if you are attracted to a deck, you're probably going to be able to read it. And I know that sounds odd, but there's always something in a deck that's calling to you. So let's take a look. And honestly, I have not, this is my first opening. I just opened it. And I'm really into some of her other decks, so that's my thing. But this is a fab tarot deck. And so what I like to do, this is just me. When I approach a new tarot deck, the first thing I look at, and I know this is going to sound strange, but I always look at the artwork on the cover, because do I like what it's telling me? And in this case, I love the moon. I love the idea of it being, and the word good. That has been that word has been coming up a lot lately, so I thought I'd use Colette's deck. Okay. And I just did a blog about that. I'll link you to it later. Okay, so one of the things we want to do when we look at a new deck, and some people shuffle, some people whatever, I want to see when I open a deck for the first time, what the very first message this deck is going to tell me. And so what I ask the deck is, what do you need me to know about working with you? And then energetically, I always believe that this is my own thing, tapping a deck and sending my energy into it. And I do this when I'm reading with clients. We used to read tarot. So I'd hold out the deck and I'd say, please tap the deck 3 times and send your energy into it. And as the client sends their energy into it, in this case, it's you and I, as we send our energy into it, we invoke all of the goodness, all of the highest possible energy, all of the God spirit into this moment. And energetically, it shifted for me. I don't know if you visually saw that, but my energy shifted. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my hand on this deck for a moment. And it's interesting because now we know it's not been shuffled, right? So I'm really feeling the first card. So I'm going to pull the first card. And I love, by the way, and I just noticed this, I'll show you the first card. It is 10 of Earth, right? So we know that's Pentacles, and we know that, and let's just stay with that for a minute, because this is this is what the deck is telling me it can do for me in this moment. So that's something also when, if you're not sure, if you're doing an unknown, if you're trying a deck for the first time, pull a card and say, what can you do for me in this moment? And so if we look at this and say 10 of Earth, now we know that the 10 of Pentacles in the traditional Rider-Waite, and I'm going to use that for a moment, we know that that card is the beginning again after a culmination of what you've created. So if we look at the 10s as, and I think I talked about this last week a little bit, as the 1s again, because the 9 is the completion in a funny way. The 10s begin again, a new chapter. So what I'm looking at here is a new chapter in what I am creating personally. So what is the deck going to do for me right now? What energetically I'm picking up. And this is, one of the things to do when you pick up a deck for the first time is just to free form your energy. And immediately I'm struck, and of course I'm into chakra, right? So immediately I'm struck by the yellow and the autumn hues here, the feeling, that autumnal feeling, that feeling of needing to complete things, that feeling of the 10 of Pentacles. Now, as I mentioned in Rider-Waite, it's actually a tree of life. So it's actually, for me, this is looking at my earthly creations right now. Now, that's what I'm picking up from this card. And for me, what does that tell me that the deck is going to do for me? Well, if I look at the card now, and I'm looking at the lady in the card, and what's coming forward to me is the idea of looking at and viewing the lay of the land, and looking at as that 10, that richness. What is it for me that becomes the next step, that becomes the legacy? So when we look at the 10s, and especially when we look at a 10 of earth, right? What am I leaving behind on the earth? That's the next incarnation, if you will. So when I look at this, it tells me that this deck for me right now is going to be a legacy reading. Whatever I pull out in this deck is going to be a legacy reading. So that means if you're looking at a legacy, right? So that's kind of what kind of reading I'm pulling today. So if you're looking at legacy, let's talk about, now remember I talked last week about the darkness, dawn, and light a little bit, and the layers that you can play with the deck. So we know that this deck is going to tell me about legacy. We also know second and third chakra, because I'm feeling the orange and yellow. So I'm feeling the emotion, and I'm also feeling the thinking behind it. So there's a process here around my emotions. So let's take a look at that. And because me, as the reader, is bringing a message to you, if you're vibing with what I'm sharing with you, the energy's coming through me, not to me. So it's very important that energetically you get that I'm the filter that's bringing you the information. So if you're vibing with me, then I'm the right filter in the moment. And that's also how you can pick someone who's right for you energetically. So let's do a quick 3-card spread with, and for those of you joining, it's the Good Tarot. And again, my friend Colette, and I'm so proud of her. She loves doing decks. This is her passion, and I love playing with them. So we have a lot in common. Okay, so, and as you know, I have my own deck. I'm actually going to have a tarot deck next year, so we'll talk about that as it gets closer. All right. All right, so what I'm going to look at here is how Colette put this together as a message for us. Now, when I say Colette, again, remember I said it's coming through us, not to us. So this is the energy that came through the creator of the deck, right? So it's the God energy that came through and speaking to us. So this is how that energy is speaking to me. Now, this is, okay. Yes, I'm putting on glasses. Okay. So the first card I'm picking up here is transformation. And the second card is 4 of air and 8 of fire. Okay. So, okay. So in a sense, and by the way, I'm going to jump around a little, because one of the things that happens if you're really doing a tarot reading that's very genuine, you're not going to go in order. The spirit brings you things like, oh, here, oh, here, oh, here. And the idea of when we read tarot, the messages come at lightning speeds. And so you just learn to pick up. It's almost like playing tennis. You're just kind of like lobbing back and forth with spirit a little. And so the first thing that comes to me is the easy part. When I say easy part, it's the first image. And when I look at 8 of, what is she calling it? Fire, right? I'm looking at 8 of wands. And we know that 8 of wands, remember the idea of the 8s, right? Those 8s are kind of starting over, reviewing what you have, not being sure what your next steps are. This is not knowing what your next steps are in this. Now wait, because that doesn't mean that that's the meaning of the spread. I want you to get that, because when you look at tarot, I'm just looking at one card and pulling it out, right? So it's like, oh, that came out. So the next card I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at both of these. And when I look at 4 of air, it's very interesting, because what comes forward to me is the idea of swords, that they cut and they protect. So when I look at this as a contemplation card, which is what I'm seeing in it, I'll show it to you clearly. There's a spirit energy to this. And it means, for me, this is a time to allow your thinking, allow your emotions, allow everything to just be and not take an action in this moment. But let's look at the first card. Now notice I'm going backwards, and I'm telling you why I sometimes go backwards. Obviously, this is a new deck for me. I haven't used the deck before, and I'm certainly like first time with you. So how I approach this is I'm pulling out pieces without making meaning of it yet. It's very important, I think, that we allow ourselves when we're reading tarot to be very freeform with the cards and with how we feel about it. And I'm bringing to it what I know about the tarot, right? And what I am bringing to it may not be what you would do if you're reading for someone, because it may, remember, the person in front of you changes the energy, right? So now transformation, of course, to me is very much about the death card. It's very much about understanding that it is over, right? So let's look at legacy for a minute. Remember I said this is a legacy spread? This is because we talked about that at the beginning when I showed you the 10 of, sorry, the 10 of Earth. Now, one of the things I want to point out here too, if I'm looking at chakra colors, I'm looking at, for me, this looks orange, blue, and it picks up a yellow hue. This is communication for me. This is about what am I communicating, and I can't communicate right now because I must be in solitude. So let's take a look at darkness, dawn, and light now. If you notice, energetically, I went backwards. Sometimes the best way not to get your brain involved in a reading and to really intuitively read is sometimes to read it backwards first for yourself. So if I was doing this with a client, I might look at this and not say anything. What I did with you, I might take less than a minute. And sometimes, especially with a client, I'll say, give me a moment to look at this. And I'll let them know that I'm deep in thought. So now let's look at this as darkness, dawn, and light. Now, if we look at the darkness, we know that the transformation has happened, right? So we're looking at the deep subconscious here in that first transformation. And we're looking at what it's going to become. And what I feel is when we look at the dawn, the second card, it really feels that sometimes we don't know what we have in our hands yet. So if we look at the dawn here, the second card, we can kind of start to go, wait a minute, I need to just step back and meditate. And I've got to tell you, I'm working on a book right now. And, my agent's like, where is it? And I'm kind of going, because what's happening is, it is in this stage, darkness, dawn, and light. Let's talk about the periphery. The darkness, energetically, is what's behind you, what I can't see, what you can't visually see. So the transformation is something that I know, energetically is happening, but I can't see it yet. The dawn is what's just coming into view, periphery, right? So the awareness is that I have to take that time and meditate. And the Eight of Wands. Now, here's an interesting thing, especially with this deck. One of the things I love about this is that I love panda. I love the panda energy. One of the things I'm looking at here is as you look at those lights, for me that means, and remember, light, it's a yellow-orange energy. And we started with yellow-orange. So that really tells me emotionally, the answer is going to come to me emotionally, which is how I get impressions, and then into my brain. Now let's put this together. So if we look at this as a legacy spread for you, I would say this is really a time when you've been trying to find out or uncover some things from the past that in some ways may have reached a dead end. And it has put you in a place of not sure how to communicate what you're experiencing. And when you hit that wall, the question becomes, what do you do energetically when you hit a wall? Well, what the cards are telling me is, and especially in this moment, is to just stop. And, for me, it's kind of like go walk the dog, or play with your kids, or, do something that takes you away from this energy, believe it or not. Because when we do that, we actually energetically throw it up to spirit and say, okay, I can't, he can, I think I'll let him. That's like the first 3 steps, the 12 steps. And that's what that tells me. And when we go here, right, to this, what the light is, the light of this really is about, it will come to you. And this is like fairyland. So it tells me it's a fortnight. It means resting, sleeping. And sometimes you can use this as 8 days or 8 nights. And I do feel, again, now let's look at beginning, middle, end, right? Because we're layering it. Beginning, middle, end. The beginning is the transformation. This is something that perhaps you've been seeking with your own legacy. And the only way to find that legacy is to look at what you've been given. Because then you can meditate on what your gifts are, and then you can travel into your own unknown, which is where all the gifts lie. And you know, I just used a quote from Denzel Washington, and it says, you know, I think, what is it? All actors think they need to brand themselves or something, but he said, my goal has always been to be good. That's branding. And so I think that's a wonderful note to leave you on with the Good Tarot. So check out the deck. Obviously, you can get it on Amazon. And let me know what you think in the comments below. And also remember, my card reading magic is coming up in a couple weeks, and you can go to cardreadingmagic.com. And Colette is going to join me in the summit this season. So I hope you'll join me. I'm looking forward to seeing you then. And lots of love to everyone. Have a great week.